Hey GBA fans, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and I will be bringing you guys Week 9 of the Pick'em crew. Now unfortunately Greg's not with me today. I kind of screwed the pooch and wasn't able to schedule with Greg. It's totally my fault, totally my bad, but expect to see Greg back in action next week when we do a better job planning ahead. But with that out of the way, let's quickly look at the Week 8 results and then we can hop into our Week 9 predictions. So there's quite a discrepancy going on in Week 8. Most things on the right side of the screen were clean sweeps as expected, but there's a whole lot of red on the left side. The Donphan losing to the Scissors was a fairly big upset. There was a little bit of a split between the Bewares and the Bear Ticks, Joey being able to bring that back after losing earlier in this season. But the really big upset here was the previously undefeated Kansas City Chiefs going down to the Montreal Habsols coached by Aster J. So that was something that only a few people saw coming. Greg in confusion got that pick right, so good for them. Aster, if you've seen him in the D-League, he is definitely a capable battler. So looking at it, it's maybe not that surprising. It's just, you know, he's been having a tough season, but I'm interested to see if Aster can continue to turn things around. It may be too late for playoffs, but at least he can, you know, make himself proud, and he'll know that he's put up the best performance as he possibly can.
Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Sock here, back with another week for the Discord Pick'ems. This week, you guys have locked the San Diego Chimp Chargers over the Columbus Chew. You guys have picked the San Francisco Giants over the Detroit Steel Wings, the Borussia Donphan over the Melbourne Rotoms, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Bronx Bear Ticks, the Philadelphia Scissors over the Florida Gators, the Milwaukee Bewares over the Montreal Habsols, the New Orleans Pelicans over the San Jose Sharpedos, and lastly, the Tampa Bay Luxrays over the Victorian Shadows.
Now let's go into the Week 9 matches, and so all of these matches in Week 9 are actually rematches of Week 3. So these are all divisional matches, all extremely crucial, especially as we get into crunch time towards playoffs here. So let's start with the first match, and this is between the Detroit Steel Wings, coached by Crimson Seabad, and the San Francisco Giants, coached by gym leader Gio. Now, there's not that much that's different between the two teams since the last matchup. I would still say that Sub Nasty Plot Thundy is very good for Chase. It's actually the exact set that he brought last time versus Geo, and it did cause some issues. Toxapex plus Shaman are a pretty annoying core to deal with, just because stuff like Infernape is like kind of walled by Toxapex. Thundy can be kind of dealt with by Shaman, and etc. One thing on Geo's side that I really like potentially is a Calm Mind Mew. Reason being is that there's not that many responses on Chase's side for that. The dark type is Volibee, which is not exactly a great dark type. It can't really deal any damage back. It just forces the Mew to run coverage besides Psychic. And then the other Psychic resists on Chase's team are Jirachi, and that's basically it. So he can run a Psychic plus maybe Shadow Ball set. Like, that is still walled by Volibee, but if Volibee is not threatening back the Mew, is it really that big of a deal? I don't know. It's kind of tough to say. I'm not sure if there's a coverage move that covers both the Jirachi and the Volibee. But maybe he wants to run something like Flamethrower instead, just to hit the Volibee neutrally instead of having the resisted Shadow Ball. That might be an option. Overall, though, I think most folks are going in favor of Geo. Geo has had a fairly decent season, and Chase, unfortunately, is struggling a little bit. Maybe people have been saying that he's stretched too thin between this and NPA and APA and things like that. But I digress. Let's move on to our next match, which is between the Columbus Chew, coached by the nefarious Coach Z, and the San Diego Chimp Chargers, coached by Lord MV. Now, the teams have shifted a little bit here. The Chew did pick up Hippowdon, which helps a little bit versus MV's electric types. In our diagnosis of this match the first time, things like Tapu Koko were looking extremely threatening, but Hippo does help quite a bit versus that. The thing that doesn't change, though, is the fact that if Coach Z brings a sort of defensive team to help deal with the likes of Koko or other things like that, something like Hoopa Unbound is just going to be able to blow them back. So it's a very difficult balance that needs to be struck, dealing with the offense or dealing with the wall breakers. The fact that now the Excadrill is a Sand Sweeper does give a little bit of a benefit to the Chew, but I think that Envy's got some good counters to that. Gligar and Slowbro in particular are just so bulky on the Fizz-Def side that I think that they're going to be able to handle the Sand Drill and sort of neutralize that as a threat. Some of the other threats like Manaphy are actually relatively easy to deal with, just mostly because of the electric types. And then Mega Gardevoir, which is new, can be pretty good if Envy elects to bring a lot of fat. And it is pretty good at dealing with stuff like Hoopa, but on the flip side of that, like Pinsir, with its ability to outspeed the Gardevoir, is going to be able to help reduce that thing's effectiveness. And then just relying again on things like Tapu Koko and Raichu should make Gardevoir a little bit less effective. So Hoopa, still pretty good, a little bit less good versus something like Guard, but you have Pinsir and Koko to pick up the slack there. So I think overall that the Chimp Chargers have the edge here. Next match is going to be between the Melbourne Rotoms, coached by Cybertron, and the Borussia Donphan, coached by El Scizor, aka Lars. Last time, Aaron made a little bit of a mistake. His Swampert was not EV'd to outspeed the Scarf Kyurem Black. I don't expect him to make that mistake again this time, because that did end up biting him in the butt quite a bit in the first game, taking unnecessary damage on the Swampert, which otherwise looks pretty good. Like, if you can get a power-up punch off on the Swampert, it could be very, very potent. Otherwise, Lars has some of the best rain checks, I think, of any team in the GBA this season. Just between the Kyurem Black, Tapu Fini, and Lurantis, he should be able to deal with all of the rain sweepers. I'll just again point out that Kartana is potentially very good for abusing all three of those Mons, so I'll have to be a little bit careful. One last note on this match is that Cobalion really went in last time, getting 4 kills. We'll have to see if that ends up happening again. On paper, it doesn't look like it's really easy to do that, just because things like Pelipper are able to wall it pretty well, and Kartana, you know, can outspeed and go for Sacred Sword if it's needed. And then you've got other Mons like Swampert, which outspeed and Revenge in the rain and can do pretty tremendous damage. Even have something cheeky like Hitmontop with Intimidate and Mach Punch for doing a little bit of damage to Cobalion. So on paper it doesn't make a lot of sense, but Cobalion is just a Mon that finds ways to get things done. So we'll see if Lars can make the magic work once again this week. Now, one of the probably most anticipated rematches is between the Brats Beartics and the Kansas City Jura Chiefs. This is an interesting game because Jolt is just coming off of his first loss, while Joey is coming off of a pretty nice rebound game. He lost pretty distinctly to Envy 2 weeks ago, but was able to pull out a W versus Wolfy last week. So is he going to be able to continue his streak and extend the losing streak from Jolt? It's hard to say. In terms of the matchup, Mega Venusaur is still as pressured this time around as it was last time. The Zygarde 50 and the Gyarados are going to be applying a lot of pressure to that thing. I think Necrozma kind of has to come this time. I'm surprised that it didn't the first time around. That is his best way of dealing with the Venusaur. You can say, you know, the Necrozma is sort of stopped by Celesteela, but there's some cheeky ways to handle that. You could run like a Charge Beam set in order to hit it super effectively and then also boost, just because Celesteela, like, naturally, due to its bulk, isn't going to take a ton of damage from like Charge Beam. But if you can start boosting alongside of it, maybe that helps you deal with it. And speaking of Celesteela, it's a little bit neutered this time just due to the presence of Magnezone. We'll have to see if if Jolt's going to bring a Wakan Berry or a Shed Shell or something to help Celesteela deal with the Mag. Because he could bring Wakan Berry plus Earthquake, and that would help deal with Mag quite a bit. But then he's losing out on leftovers or some other useful items such as a Z Crystal for taking out Joey's team. On Jolt's side, we saw in the first game that Bulk Up Breloom was extremely potent, but I'm not sure if it's going to work quite as well this time. If Joey can get his Linoon in before Breloom does too much setting up, he can outspeed and outprioritize the Mach Punch with an extreme speed. Maybe if he's like a Choice Banded Linoon or something like that, that would be very useful. And then in the same way, I think Salazzle could be a decent check to Breloom. Not that it's all that bulky, but you know, it just resists the dual stabs of Breloom. And even though Breloom does have Facade to potentially cover Salazzle, the Flamethrower coverage is obviously there on Salazzle to nuke the Breloom. I don't think even a max HP Breloom can take a Flamethrower from a Life Orb Salazzle. So I think most people here are going in favor of Jolt, but I'm very curious to see how this one plays out. I think now that the first matchup is over and this is the second matchup, and both teams, particularly Joey, are jockeying for playoffs. Jolt more just for seeding. I think they're going to pull out all the stops and bring all their best strategies. Our next match is another one that a lot of folks are excited for. This is between the Florida Gators, coached by Gator, and the Philadelphia Scizors, coached by Chimp. Now, this might actually be the game of the week. Both coaches are 6-2, fighting for the top of their division, and whoever loses this match will still be in playoff contention, but depending upon the result of Wolfy's game, might only end up being one game ahead. So it's going to be very tough for whoever loses this match. They're basically going to have to win out for the rest of the season to confirm their playoff position, but whoever wins this match is probably going to be fairly comfortable moving forward. So lots of implications in this match. If you watched our playoff picture, I'm sure it was discussed quite a bit. But in terms of the Mons on the two rosters, I still think Altaria is looking very good in this matchup. One difference in the teams from last time they battled to this time is that Ferrothorn is now on Chimp's side, which is going to force Altaria to run Fire Blast or Flamethrower, but just fire coverage in general is now needed for dealing with the Ferrothorn. So I thought like a DD Roost could have been very good before. I'm not sure that that's still the case. I guess you could do just like a 3-attack set, and that would be very good. 3 attacks with Roost or 3 attacks with Dragon Dance, and that's going to be very nice. On Chimp's side, he did end up cleaning up the game with Nihilego in the first game, so he was able to get a victory there. I'm not sure that that's going to happen this time. The Gators did not bring Heatran in their first game, and that's one of the best checks that there is to Nihilego, and so that's going to be able to prevent that from sweeping potentially. And then you also have Klefki there to check it. And he did bring in the first matchup Mons like Floatzel and Mamoswine, both of which have priority for potentially dealing with Nihilego. So I think it's unlikely that Nihilego is going to repeat as a sweep. Let's look at the next matchup. This is the Milwaukee Bewares, coached by Wolfy Glick, and the Montreal Habsols, coached by Aster J. One new Mon in this matchup is Entei, and I think it actually has a really good matchup for the Bewares this week, just because fire coverage is pretty nice versus all of Aster's team for the most part, and things like Barbarical don't really want to switch in on Sacred Fire, and you can also just run HP Grass anyways. And say you run like an Expert Belt Entei, you could just run, click Sacred Fire, potentially burn it, and then it's not much of a threat to you, then hit it with the HP Grass and do tremendous damage to it. The other Mons that can switch in on Sacred Fire are Mudsdale and Melodic, and neither of them really want to be Toxic. And Mudsdale, of course, doesn't really want to be burned either. The last reason Entei is really nice is just because of the potential for extreme speed priority. It's going to be nice for revenge killing Zoroark, Lopunny, Scolipede, things like that. So I think Entei is going to be really important here. On Aster's side, Scolipede is still really amazing for blowing through Wolfy's defensive core of Reuniclus, plus Florges, plus Tangrowth. I just hope that Aster decides not to bring Mono Throat Chop this week, just because it looked so certain that he was going to be able to beat Wolfy the first time, and then it just didn't work out. But just based on the track records of this season, even though Aster had the amazing upset performance last week, I'm still going to go in favor of Wolfy. Next up, we have the New Orleans Pelipers, coached by Pokemon, aka John, and the San Jose Sharpedos, coached by Tom. Now, Tom did end up winning this first matchup on the backs of Swellow and Scizor, mainly. Yeah, I picked John in the first matchup, but I think that looking at that, it makes sense that Tom could have an advantage here. I still think that the Volt Turn that he's got could throw John for a loop. And actually for John, I would really like to see him bring something like Helmet Chomp with a special attacking moveset rather than a physical moveset. The reason that that's nice is that allows him to switch in a little bit better on Rotom, because if the Rotom predicts the Garchomp switch in and goes for Will-O-Wisp, it's not as big of a deal. You can still hit that thing with, Dragon Pulse or Draco Meteor or whatever. And then you can use HP Ice for hitting Landorus, and you can use Fire Blast for hitting Scizor. So it just seems like a good moveset. It's funny, the leading kill getter on John's team is actually Piloswine, and it's actually looking really nice this match. The fact that it's got the Ice Shard priority makes it a decent way to deal with a setup Lando or a setup Como-O. You obviously just have annoying stuff like Rotom that can deal pretty well with Piloswine, but again, just the priority is so important, and it's also good for Swellow. You know, I mentioned that was a mon that did extremely well in the first matchup, and I still agree with that assessment. I think Swellow is still really amazing. Offensively, other important bonds on Tom's side are Scizor and Roserade. They're good ways for dealing with Diancie. Finally, we'll go and talk about the Tampa Bay Luxrays versus the Victorian Shadows. And the matchup here hasn't really changed much at all. I think the only change is that Necrostevo added Metagross instead of Forretress, but that unfortunately doesn't help him deal with the likes of Weavile or Charizard X. I think both of those are still very scary. I think it's going to be important for Necro to bring a Fizdef Tyranitar to potentially deal with the Charizard, and you know, otherwise the setup set from Zard could be very scary. And the sand support from Tyranitar is very nice for hitting, or you know, boosting up Lycanroc's speed. Lycanroc has a very nice matchup here. The rock resists are not that great on Mono's side. It's just like Palo-Sand and Registeel. And I think that Crunch and Fire Fang are two moves that are in Lycanroc's toolbox. I could be getting it mixed up with some of the other forms. I don't know for sure. But you know, there's potentially some options there. And Lycanroc is a Z-move user, so there's a way to get, you know, a more powerful coverage option if he wants to try and hit those bonds. I guess also Keldeo is a fairly decent response to Lycanroc in the sand, just because it does resist the rock coverage. So we'll have to see what Necro decides to break out. I just, again, think that the combination of Keldeo and Zard is going to be too overwhelming for Necrostevo to deal with. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be our coverage for Week 9 of the GBA Pick'em crew. If you guys would like, make sure to leave a comment down below letting us know who you think is going to win each game. And check out the description because it will have a link to the GBA fan Discord. And that is where you can vote for the fan result each week. As you can see, there is a fan pick'em in our little graphic here. And they're actually doing quite great. They're in second place overall for all of the picks. So if you'd like to contribute, make sure you check out the fan Discord. And while you're in the description, make sure you check out all of our fantastic coaches so you can stay up to date on our weekly action. And make sure you sub to the GBA channel for all the latest and greatest analyst content. So once again, I've been Choice CJ. Thank you very much. Until the next time, we'll see you guys later.